So we're here today to talk about sort of digital challenges in the sector, which I'm sure a lot of you are facing at the moment. Everything from cybersecurity, AI, ethics, hybrid work, and digital fundraising. So we're increasingly seeing that digital is across all of our work, sort of community facing, but also in back office operations. But we really see that alongside those challenges, digital skills and confidence can create huge opportunities for charities to strengthen their governance, reach more people, and make better decisions. And that's why we want to see trustees with digital design or data skills on the board of every charity. So we've got some great speakers here today to help us explore this topic. I'll just run through who everyone is. So we've got Ross McCulloch, who's the founder of Third Sector Lab, helping charities and social entrepreneurs get the most out of digital and design. We've got John, who's the Senior Manager for Digital and Communication at the Scottish Charity Regulator, OSCR. We've got Tessa, who is digital leader and service owner at the Scottish Government and also a digital trustee at the Scottish Seabird Centre. And then Harry, who is the CEO of the Scottish Seabird Centre. So we thought it'd be really interesting to hear from both Tessa and Harry about their experiences of having a digital trustee involved with the organisation. So thank you to you all for being here today. So to kick us off, I'm going to hand over to Ross just to give us a bit of context about what we're seeing and hearing from the sector at the moment and how the Digital Trustees programme is responding to some of those challenges. Thanks, Ross.
Brilliant, thank you, Zoe. So, as Zoe said, I am Ross McCulloch from Third Sector Lab, and we've been running Digital Trustees since 2018. I think the first one we maybe ran, so first one we ran, I think John, you were maybe at that in Informatics Forum in Edinburgh, and then we ran another one at the National Lotteries headquarters in Glasgow, and they were in-person events where we would matchmake people from the tech sector with third sector organisations. So although charities are the focus, we've worked with community groups, social enterprises, KICs, right across the kind of spectrum of third sector. So physical events. When the pandemic hit, we took a wee bit of a pause on digital trustees, and then we came back with our online matchmaking events. So if you go to the link that I've popped in the chat box, I think Caelan's popped it in as well. It's also on the slides. You can sign up for future matchmaking events. You can also create a profile for your organisation as well. So that will take you through a series of very short questions. You'll create a live profile, and that means potential digital trustees can find an organisation like yours, understand your challenge and what you're looking for from a board member. Equally, we have reverse matchmaking available on the platform as well. So you go on right now, and you can see digital data and design professionals looking for charity boards like yours, and you can reach out to them and make that first step. We are about to embark on a slightly more involved process with digital trustees, where we're going to have a three-step process that we're kind of piloting at the moment. If you get money from the National Lottery Fund Scotland, Esme Fairbairn Foundation, if you're UK wide, or the Robertson Trust, you can access that programme, and that's a more intensive programme of support for your organisation. And what will help you do is think about what are your digital challenges, what does it mean to get digital on the board agenda. We're not just recruiting a trustee and then plonking them on the board and then hoping for the best. We'll support with a bit more hands-on matchmaking for you. So if data is your big challenge going into 2026, we'll help you find a data analyst for your board. And what we'll also do is do a wee bit of follow-up. So Zoe and myself will be doing some follow-up to make sure that people sustain on those board positions as well. And we'll chat probably a wee bit about that as we go through today, is like what makes a board position appealing for someone that's working in the tech sector. How do we sustain those people, and how do we make the most impact with that as well? The other thing just to say as well, my LinkedIn is on that first slide. So if you've got the slides open, you can click the link. If you want to connect and ask any questions afterwards, you can, but there's a chance for Q&A today. So pulled out some of the stats from the Charity Digital Skills Report. There's been an improvement year on year, and particularly post-pandemic, we're seeing quite a big improvement in digital in the sector, but the sector is still quite far behind compared to the private sector in particular. So 44% of charities have a strategy in place for digital. I would say that if you were to take that as segments and you were to look at large charities, medium charities, small charities, and then grassroots community groups, that number would vary quite wildly. 63% of charities feel that they made digital progress this year, which is great, and it's up from last year. 76% of charities using AI in their day-to-day operations. Now, that is on the one hand really good, really positive. On the other hand, if you kind of look beneath that figure and you look at how many charities have a comprehensive policy or strategy around AI, that number is much, much smaller. So yes, it's good people are using AI. Are we using it carefully? Are we using it ethically? Are we using it in a way that's going to be safe for our users and our staff? 28% of charities say their digital trustee skills are low. That has increased quite considerably, which is good. I would like to think we've played a small part in that through digital trustees. The figure from last year, which is not published in this year's report, 41% of charities don't have anyone representing digital data design skills on their board. 68% of charities struggling with digital because of squeeze of finances. Probably lots of you in the room are seeing that at the moment. And 56% are not engaging with emerging trends. Now, what I'd like to think about is not engaging with things like AI for the sake of it, or it feels like the next shiny thing, but how are we building resilient charities that are fit for purpose in 2026 and that meet user needs and make decisions based on data and really good service design. And that's really what we're thinking about when we think about getting a digital trustee on the board. So, as Zoe said, our big mission is to ensure that every charity has someone on the board who can help them with these areas. I think one of the things, I'm not going to get into the whole stuff around like what is governance, what's not governance, what's strategic, what's operational. I'm sure we'll get into that today. Something we've always been quite strict on through our matchmaking events is digital trustees is not about finding someone to build a CRM or build your website or help you out with your social media for the next 3 months. We're talking about people on the board to provide governance and strategic direction, and that person might be able to open up the doors of thinking about what's the funding we'll go for, how do we build this into our service offer, how do we speak to our existing funders about making this part of the funding that we have right now. But we're not talking about someone doing the day to day and doing the operational stuff. As part of this conversation, I hope we'll get into this as we go throughout today. We know, probably most of you in the room know, that charity boards diversity is pretty woeful in the United Kingdom. So less than 3% of charity trustees are under 30. Less than 8% are from a Black or Asian background. And once you get into the kind of bigger charities, so the largest 500 charities, only 13% of them have gender parity on the board. I didn't mention which gender tends to be more prominent on the boards, but you can probably guess that one. A couple of case studies, and if you go and look on our website and also Third Sector Lab LinkedIn, we've got a digital trustees page over on LinkedIn. You'll see some of these case studies in depth. Hannah, for me, is a really nice example of a trustee under the age of 25, so a young trustee who came in with user experience design background, but has completely transformed Cycling Without Age England. Now, the big reason she came in initially was they were going through quite a large scale CRM procurement process. Hannah helped them through that process by thinking about what are user needs in our staff team, how will this impact our users once we put this system in place, rather than just thinking we need to buy a thing that's going to get us out of this problem that we're in the first place. And what the organisation's done is built a culture of user-centred design across that organisation, and it's really helped them go for new funding streams, make decisions at a service level, but also at a senior level in the organisation. But her input has been transformational. And for me, this is what a good digital trustee can do for you. It's not just about that one person and they're siloed, but that one person builds a culture of change in the organisation. That may be a culture of change around cybersecurity, it might be around data, it might be around user-centered design, it might be about using flexible technology, but the role is not sitting in a silo of digital. Hugh, which some of you will know, is Chief Information Officer at Research Data Scotland. Yeah, Hugh has been someone we supported on a board, and he's made a huge impact on the board that he's on. I think his words are really useful today, where we're thinking about there is responsibility in being a trustee. So for those of you in the room who work in a tech sector career and want to be a trustee, it's a lot of responsibility. What I would say is it's usually a much lower time commitment than your average volunteering opportunity, and we can talk a wee bit about that today, that it might be as low as a few hours per month. Most boards meet quarterly. You might want to think about sometimes board positions can be offered on shorter term board positions. So it could be 18 months, 24 months. So what we're seeing a lot more and what we're calling for is a kind of diversity of opportunity on board that is not just everyone who comes on is going to be with us for 5 years and a board has to look like this. Is actually we can rethink how boards operate, how they make decisions, and what they look like and what those terms look like as well. This is one shamelessly pinched from my LinkedIn. Nice bit of feedback from Lauren about our matchmaking events. If you're interested in creating a free profile, I've said professional profile there, but you can also create a profile for your organisation as well. if you click that link and click through, but you'll see lots of people right now, professionals looking for charities like yours, and equally lots of charities like yours who are looking for people to join the board as well. I think I'm going to leave with these words from Lindsay at IBM. This pretty much sums it up for me is don't transform to preserve the how, transform to match the why. A good digital trustee helps your organisation get back to why it was set up in the first place. A good digital trustee is not putting a digital sticking plaster on bad processes or thinking about how we do things as they are, but it's really about you getting back to that purpose and that reason that your charity was set up in the first place. So think about what that means for your organisation, and we can maybe chat about that and explore that a wee bit more as we go through it today. So I've said ask me anything at the end, but I think we're going to have a panel session after we hear from the speakers. So I'll hand back over to Zoe just now.
Thanks, Ross. It's really useful context. And I think while we're just thinking about the bigger picture, I might ask you, John, to come in and just sort of say a few words about sort of governance in a digital context and what that means. And obviously, OSCR itself advertised for digital board
Yeah.
member recently. So this is something that the regulator itself has taken very seriously. But I just wondered if you can say a few words about sort of governance and in the digital context.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. Firstly, I just to say thank you to Ross and to Zoe for organising the whole event and for inviting Oscar to take part. I think we think this is an important area of work, which will be to the benefit of charities in Scotland and elsewhere too. So thank you very much for doing that and for inviting me along. I mean, charity trustees are people that are in overall control or a management of a charity. So different people call them different things. They might be committee members or directors, but the law says that they are charity trustees. And the charity trustees are the people who are ultimately responsible for the governance and the strategy of what's going on, not necessarily for doing everything. The trustees may delegate work to volunteers or to staff, depending on the size of the nature of your organisation. Trustees are there, they have a collective responsibility. So in the same way, an accountant on a board is not the only person that's responsible for the finances. Digital trustees wouldn't be the only people responsible for the digital work. There's a collective responsibility there. And there's a collective responsibility amongst the trustees to act in the best interests of the charity and make sure that the charity complies with the law. It's particular charity law for me, but all laws in general. And I think having that, but I think we think it, to take on Ross's point, a good charity is run by a strong board that has a variety of skills and experiences, right? Because that will add to the mix of the ability for that group to be able to make good, informed decisions about what the charity does and how it complies with the charitable purposes that is set out. And that's and that, I suppose, it's building that base and that good foundation for a charity that this plays a part in. But beyond that, as Joy said, I mean, OSCR is not a charity, we're a public body, but we did recently run a recruitment exercise, and we recognise within that exercise that in our own board, we've that having I am held to account by our very effectively already, but we think we can make sure that we're held to account even better by having people on a board with a wider range of things, including a wider range of skills, including digital skills. This is important because of the world that we live in. Yesterday, we were delighted to support some work by SCVO, Alison Brogan at SCVO, which was to launch the strategic framework for a cyber resilient Scotland. So make sure I get it right, which is about making sure that all organisations across Scotland are cyber resilient, that we can deliver so that charities can deliver the services you do the good that you do and the benefit you do in a resilient way when we know that cybersecurity is an increasing issue. Right? People trying to find the information that you have about that may be valuable or interesting to them. I mean, I know that even in my, I'm not a trustee at the moment, but I'm a volunteer for the Bridge of Ayr Netball Club in Perth. And I know that even within our small organisation, data security is a huge issue. because we have names and addresses, health details, all of all our players and coaches and others. And so, coming into there and having an understanding of how that works, having a group of people who are concerned about making sure that we get it right is important. And I think that's the same for all charities now too. Digital tools and infrastructure play a central role in allowing charities to do the good work that you all do. And so having expertise and an understanding about how that works and how to plan to the future is absolutely essential to running a good charity in 2025.
Yeah,
so
absolutely agree, John. Thank
So-
you. Thanks. And I think obviously that's a bit of context about the sector, but I'd love to hear from you, Tessa, someone you're a digital leader in the government in your day job, and you're also a digital trustee with the Seabird Centre. So I'd love to hear your experience as a trustee and what does it actually mean in practice to be a digital trustee on a board. And then perhaps afterwards we could hear from Harry as the CEO about his experience of having your skills on the board of the organisation.
Yeah, no problem, Zoe. Yeah, I've been on the board of the Seabird Centre for about 5 years, and it's actually my second board position. Previous to that, I was a digital trustee for Impact Arts. I think what I discovered at Impact Arts is that their ambition and my skills were not a perfect match. And although I cared deeply about the organisation, they were amazing, I wasn't quite what they needed. They were very much a face-to-face organisation, and their digital footprint was quite small, and I tend to do bigger stuff. So when I was looking for a second trustee position, I was quite careful that my values and my skills matched what the organisation needed. So the Seabird Centre matched in lots of different ways. They've have a national remit, so digital was a great way that they could span out from just their one location. But also they had one of their core parts of their kind of unique offer is the kind of web cameras that are out on the Bass Rock showing people seabirds. So there's a technical part of what they do at their core. So it was a really kind of strong match. What I think we found in the last 5 years is that also that initial match kind of became kind of more deeply rooted, and now as well as being on their main board, I'm also on their trading company board because I've got experience in e-commerce. I've also got experience on membership organizations, so I could bring that into the skill. And I think there's a lot of things that Ross was saying is that about digital practice that I can bring. I'm forever going on about users. I'm forever asking about user journeys and how they are using those things in the organization. Quite often talking about analytics and user research as well. So it's kind of, and one thing that I'm very keen on, and the Seabird Centre are looking at their strategy at the moment, well, I know Harry is that we don't have a separate digital strategy. What I'm really keen is digital is throughout their organisational strategy as a way they enable it. It can work either way, don't get me wrong. If you have a digital strategy, I'm not saying that's terrible or anything, but I think because I've been there 5 years, I think the Seabird Centre is at a level of maturity that they can actually make this intrinsic to what they do as opposed to something on the side. I also think it's partly my role to help the other trustees think this way, and I have definitely seen an evolution in the trustee kind of understanding of what digital can do. And I would also say I think that the changing of the demographic and the diversity of the board has helped that as well. There was very much it started off with I was the person talking about digital. And then I think it's actually the board now is far more understanding, and the skills are broader as we all develop, our digital knowledge all develops. But I have to say, I love it. I love the fact that I've got a really stressful job and it's very busy, but this is a change of mindset, a change of, it's not pace, because this is also hard work and busy, but yeah, it's a different sector, it's a different environment, it's a different purpose. So I find the two benefit each other. I mean, I'll shut up now, let Harry talk.
No, that's really interesting. Thanks, Tessa. I noted down a couple of things I'm going to ask you about afterwards, but I'd love to hear sort of Harry's perspective as well in terms of having someone on the board who is a sort of digital expert and how that works in practice and what you think it brings to the organisation.
Sure. I joined the Seabird Centre as Chief Executive in January, and I was very pleasantly surprised because I've been involved in a lot of other charities in the past. I've been a director of another charity as well. And I think I immediately saw, I'm not just saying this, but I did immediately see the difference between this board and others that I had dealt with. And it wasn't just because we had a digital champion, which I didn't know actually was kind of Tessa's role, as it were, but it was immediately apparent. But because it was kind of embedded in, and there was a bit of fluency, digital fluency within the kind of broader board, which I really welcomed. And I think I would point out three kind of fundamental differences that makes. First of all, the board values the charity's digital assets, and that's quite important when it comes to decision making. So as an example, one of the things I did relatively early on was embark on a bit of a digital transformation project, transitioning to new CRM. It was the discussion that we had at the board level about that, and the need to invest in those assets was a lot simpler because that kind of, the board body valued, and obviously I had members who understood it as well, which makes a big difference. And the other difference it makes is, one of the fundamental roles of trustees are just ensuring that charity complies with the law, and compliance with the digital part of that is actually complex, and it's new for a lot of us. And if I think about my team, we're a small team here, and we don't necessarily have that skills and the full kind of understanding of the law as it applies to our digital activities and assets that we need. And so when we did embark on that CRM project, it was actually Tessa who picked up on the fact that we hadn't done a data impact assessment. And Tessa was able to point that out before the project began, was able to ensure that we did that and nudge us in the right direction in terms of what we needed to do with that assessment. And I think the third difference then that I would point out is it means, again, as a small charity with a small comms team, that you could not reasonably expect to have that full suite of digital skills. They've got a kind of, I think, a really positive relationship with Tessa, who acts as a bit of a mentor. And the thing that Tessa's able to do is get them to step back and say, kind of, what's the strategy here? What does the user journey look like? And that, for me, that's key when it comes to all, as a trustee, engaging at the strategic level. And I've seen it when it doesn't work as well, when you've got trustees engaging on kind of, is that tweet worded correctly? We don't get any of that here. We get the kind of strategic level engagement of ensuring the digital strategy is right and just kind of opening doors to skills we don't necessarily have in-house.
That's brilliant. Such a good example of it working in practice. Just picking up on something that Tessa said and Ross mentioned earlier, I think there's a bit of a risk sometimes when you have somebody who is sort of a specialist professional coming into a board. But how do we make sure that it's not just that one person shouldering the responsibility of sort of digital within an organisation, and like building the confidence across the board and throughout the organisation? Because it sounds like something that you've managed to achieve quite well at the Seabird Centre.
Yeah, I think there's a point that the Seabird management team understood that they wanted that to happen, So I had a kind of mandate from the chief executive and her senior management team at the time So, and that definitely helps, so I was clear that that was part of what I had to do. I'm very experienced. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm very experienced in trying to take organizations who have a low digital maturity and try and make that higher. And so in a way, I was the right trustee to try and do that. That was part of what I like to do. And I would be rubbish at wording your tweet, to be perfectly honest, Harry. So, there's a reason I don't get involved. But I think the way it takes time, one you don't change it overnight, and you have to chip away, and as you said, sometimes it's people don't understand, or that you haven't found the kind of the killer piece for them, but again, I think it's also understanding what they need from you. So you're not just kind of saying digital or data to them for the sake of it. It's actually what's their charitable purpose and how can you help them fulfill it. So I think very much I was looking, I mean, I was a trustee through the COVID days, and so public fundraising became incredibly important, and an online profile, and so it's not forcing your agenda, it's proposing the charity's agenda. And I think that's really important. You're not doing this. I mean, it's great for your career, it's great for your development, but you're doing it for the charity and the charity's purpose. And if you can tailor that, and the great thing about digital is you can often evidence the effect as well. But so patience and pragmatism and remembering why you're there, I think.
Yeah, that's really nice, and actually links into a question that I was going to ask all of the panelists actually was, what do you think are just some practical sort of first steps? There might be people on this call who are just sort of exploring this for the first time, and we do want to start that conversation. So I might just come to you, Ross, about what do you think are some of the sort of first steps that people can take on their journey to becoming more sort of digitally confident as a board?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's some really good benchmarking tools out there. SCVO's got one, I think NCVO have got one. There's a few of them out there, and those benchmarking tools will take you through a series of questions on the kind of core areas around digital data and design. So areas like cybersecurity, which has been touched on a lot, leadership and culture, how you're using flexible technology in the day to day, are you using data for decision making? I'll not go through the full list, but those kind of core areas of when we think about digital, what are we actually talking about? And by the end of that, you'll essentially have a score that benchmarks you against other third sector organisations. And that's quite a good way of thinking about, well, what are our priorities for this year? So one of the charities that we worked with, their big priority for 2025 was data. And when they recruited a trustee, they wanted a data analyst because it was actually a children's residential care charity, and they were like, we just sit on loads of data. It's basically just a compliant filing cabinet. We don't use it to make decisions. There's nothing strategic about it. Children don't even know where their data goes. We just capture it from them and it sits somewhere. And actually, our big focus this year is going to be data. We need someone on the board who's going to lead that. So it's okay to think we've got one big challenge we're going to focus on for 2026. So it might be that you've had a cyber attack and actually we want to become as robust as we can be. We're going to get a cyber expert on our board. You might have something where you've got a mix of challenges and you want an all-rounder, but that kind of benchmarking tool will help you think about starting that journey and what that looks like. The other thing that's quite useful to do alongside that, and this is more about kind of just general confidence and resilience in the organisation, is starting to do a digital skills assessment of your staff teams. Lots of charities don't really know the digital skills of their staff, frontline staff or senior. And actually, until you've done that, it's really tricky to think about, well, what is this board member going to be responsible for? If they want to make change, are we ready for it? So, Tessa comes in and she wants to make change in the organisation, but people don't know the difference between a left and right click on a mouse button. That's going to be a bit of a struggle. And I don't say that as a throwaway comment. I worked with a social care charity where that was the case. A member of staff didn't know that, and the organisation didn't really know how poor the digital skills of some of those frontline staff were. So that for me is a good starting point. Benchline and kind kind of digital skills of your staff teams across the board, and also benchmarking where your organisation's at, and then that gives you that kind of that next step. What I'm going off on a bit of a rant here, but what I've tended to find is lots of people we speak to are like, well, we've got a digital trustee already, and it tends to be one of two types of people. It's either a Microsoft reseller, so someone who's not actually from a tech background, they sell Microsoft products. That's nothing against Microsoft, but their job is to sell you Microsoft things. The other type of person will be someone who maybe is like a social media consultant or a general comms all-rounder. Now that's great if your big challenge is we have Microsoft Suite and we don't know what to do with it because we don't have IT support. It's also great if your big challenge is around online comms. If your challenge is about delivering services fit for purpose in 2026, those people are not going to be much use. If your challenge is about being safe and secure, they're probably not going to be much use. So on and so forth. You get the picture. So having kind of surface level approaches to digital doesn't really cut it in 2026. And I'd like to just for you to think about like what's that depth of experience we really need, and also how does that person become someone who challenges other board members? The same way that, you know, if you have someone on your board who's a finance expert, it doesn't mean that everyone else on the board doesn't know anything about accounts and just closes their ears when it comes to finance stuff. You all have responsibility when it comes to finance. And for me, digital is the same thing. You have an expert, but other people need to have an ability to input in that and challenge and sense check things as well.
Thanks. And Tessa, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, just a quick build on Ross's point there is a lot of people think digital's about technology, you know, and hardcore kind of technology, whereas actually a big part of the profession is service design. And the one thing the majority of charities have is a service. And that can be incredibly important to think from that perspective. So I'd just say is like, don't always think about it as kind of data and plugs and code and all that stuff. And I think that innovation thinking and the ideas that you can get from that and that service design approach would benefit all charities.
Yeah, really good point. I wonder, John, if you got anything just sort of on sort of practical tips or sort of signposting to other resources. I spotted that you shared the cyber resilience link in the chat. I just wondered if there's anything else from OSCR perspective.
And what I would say, I suppose, is your responsibilities here mirror the kind of overall general responsibilities that trustees have. You know, trustees' responsibility under law is to act in the best interest of the charity. And so you have, you know, I think that has to be a proactive and not a reactive position if you're going to be a good trustee. So, you know, if you're a trustee, sign up to, I would encourage you to, OSCR will send your charity emails when it must do something, but also we do a newsletter that has changes in upcoming changes in law, other things that might be of interest to you. That's, you know, the announcement we made yesterday about cybersecurity. So take an active interest in these things and sign up for news from OSCR or from SCVO or from the umbrella body that operates in your area of work, and be interested, because increasingly a lot of those will refer to as digital work. What I would say is I think boards should set aside time to talk, you know, to actively discuss what their opportunities are and what their risks and challenges are. Right, and actually going back to first principles, is if a board is right, what can we do? How could we do this better? What, you know, we've got this data. How could we get better at it? Then that'll precipitate the sort of things that Ross is talking about there about actual action plans and other things. And what risks do you have? Well, we know that cybersecurity is a huge issue, and that it's you know, that if you have to be proactive in thinking about and planning how you hold your information and your data in order to meet your legal responsibilities, but and to keep everything safe and secure. So if you set aside the time to talk about what you want to do and what you have to protect yourself from, then all this other stuff will come from that. If your board meetings are simply just a tick box exercise or a reactive exercise, then you'll struggle at lots of things, not just getting digital.
Thanks, John. Harry, I spotted your hand up there.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, for me, it's about embedding it across all the activities of the charity. And I think when you're thinking about how you get the board in a place where they're fluent on all of this, all boards have routine kind of agenda items, standing, risk reviews, KPI reviews. And for me, it's just make sure you've got kind of digital related KPIs. You've got part of your risk register that covers all of your digital risks, if you see what I mean, rather than having kind of a standalone discussion about digital over here. And I think, again, that's a difference compared to other charities that I've worked in that I've seen here. That's when you get perhaps all trustees talking about this on a routine basis.
Yeah, exactly. We actually had a question in the chat about what would be the benefits or sort of advantages to an individual themselves in being a digital trustee. And I mean, that's something that we're working on at the Third Sector Lab, is working with corporate partners to try and sort of allow the staff to have time to pursue digital trustee opportunities. But I wonder, Tessa, maybe you could come in and just say sort of some of the benefits or maybe things that you learn through being involved with the charity that you take back into your everyday work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it is something that I think about regularly. I mean, the reason I became a charity trustee was because I generally I'm quite an altruistic person. So, and doing that work fulfills that need really strongly, of course. And with the Seabird Centre, helping the marine environment, with the ocean producing 50% of the Earth's oxygen, feels quite a big thing. But also, honestly, I thought it would look good in my CV. I was looking for promotion. I knew I was capable of more senior level, and I felt there was things that would show that I could do more. And I do think, as well as the CV points, I've learned new skills. I know a lot more about governance and legislative and regulated practice and charities and sector issues. So I think that's incredibly helpful. I'm up with the budget guys, so I think, you're not just looking after the digital, you have to look after the health of the whole charity. So, you do expand those conversations. I also think the expansion of your network is amazing, and it's people that you just wouldn't come into contact from other your normal working day. So, for example, I've got good connections now with SAVO, Tesco, RSPB, Calla Homes, Open University. There's a whole pile of contacts. Everyone always jokes that I always know a guy who knows a guy, but I do, and this is one of the reasons. I also think a lot of my work lately has been delivery. I was leading the kind of Ukraine resettlement crisis work for digital data. So it's really nice still to be flexing my strategic kind of skill set and innovation skill set and things like that, and visitor focused as well. I used to work in visitor experiences. So there's a whole pile of stuff that I get a kick out of. And it's just great. It makes you feel that you're doing something good, but also, the guys are very, I was going to say grateful. That sounds awful, but they're very proactive, and everything that we talk about, something happens. So, and as Harry pointed out, I occasionally get a boat trip or taking rock pooling or something exciting like that. So, we can't promise all charities do those things, but the Seabird Centre do.
Oh, that sounds lovely. We had another question in the chat, which was for you, Ross, I think, about sort of how we find the experience of matching tech professionals to boards. So you could maybe speak a little bit about the work that we're doing at the moment and sort of in terms of broadening that out. But then I think it might be interesting just to hear more broadly from the panelists about like how to look for the right person or to look for the right opportunity and matching in that way as well. But I think if we come to you first, Ross.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the work that we've generally done up to this point has been quite open and quite broad, and we'll still continue to do that through the open matchmaking events that we have every couple of months. So, and what I mean by that is we'll do kind of one-to-one matching, and that's been everything from like someone who's like an independent freelancer to we had the head of product at Spotify, came on one of our matchmaking events and found a trustee position. So people in quite senior roles in global tech firms down to people in more freelance positions. What we're moving towards that will sit alongside that model is working with teams. So we've been speaking to people like JP Morgan and Barclays and other kind of bigger organizations where they have, massive teams of developers, data analysts, service designers, and actually how do we support those teams to think about their volunteering. And for me, that's been a bit of a move away. When people in the tech sector want to volunteer and give their skills, they immediately go, well, what do I do in my day to day? I'll just go and do that somewhere. And that's fine. There is a bit of a danger of tech saviorism, and we saw that during the pandemic. Like, people, loads of great intentions, but what happened in the charity sector was people built things, whether it was an app or a website or a CRM system or something else, and then they left after that 2 week sprint of building it, and that charity is left with this kind of white elephant legacy bit of digital infrastructure that nobody knows how it works or nobody's there to support it. And actually that's basically short-termism. And what we need to see is, yes, good kind of skilled volunteering in those areas is valuable once it's well managed. But actually what I would love to see is more people in the tech sector committing to that kind of longer term stuff. Now, there's a big thing in the tech sector where loads of people just don't know what being a trustee is. Like, they've never heard of governance. They know what boards are because they know what a board is in their organisation. They don't really know what a board is in the charity sector. So part of Zoe and I's role is to do that education piece with those teams to understand, like, what is good governance, what's my role as a digital trustee. One of the other things that we found, I put in some of the research around this that come particularly from the States, is this can accelerate people's careers pretty quickly. So if you're in a management role or you're looking to take that step up, being on a board gives you exposure to, like, how do accounts work. You're speaking to people, maybe you're speaking to someone like Tessa from the government. You currently work in a tech firm, but now you're speaking to someone who works in the government, or you're speaking to someone who works in frontline healthcare, or someone who works in policy at Glasgow University. So broadening out your understanding of strategy and governance becomes a really powerful thing for people. But I think on a simple level, like, most people in the tech sector just don't know that being on a board is an option for them. There's also a thing of, like, the perceptions of board. Like, I spoke to a guy who runs one of the tech meetups in Glasgow, and he's probably in his mid-50s, and he's like, oh, this is maybe something I'll do in the future. And there's still this thing of, like, a board is a thing I will do when I retire. And actually, we need to make being a board much more palatable for a younger audience and a much more diverse audience. And sometimes that is like, how does the board operate? How does it make decisions? How do we present those board opportunities to people? So once people get it, they're, like, really keen. Like, it's very unusual for us to explain digital trustees, do a bit of the education piece, and then people are like, nah, that's not for me. Like, most people want to join a board and offer their skills in that way. But that initial hurdle of getting to someone and speaking to them something is quite tricky. Just a very, very brief final thing, because I'm conscious of taking up lots of time, is I think at the moment, board recruitment in the charity sector is a wee bit flawed in this space. So you either put an advert up on a charity recruitment website. Now, nobody in the tech sector knows they exist, let alone look at them. Or you go and get a charity headhunter who charges you £5,000 to go and find a trustee. And that charity headhunter is great for finding your next assistant chief exec. They've no idea how to find someone who works in digital data design, because that's not their bread and butter. So for me, that's the big thing that we've been trying to do, is, like, we're not charging people £5,000 because you can access it for free as a charity. But also, if you're going to put up ads, often you're kind of like, you'd be as well just shouting out the window, because that's probably about the level of reach that you're going to get into the tech sector.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ross. And maybe just a follow on to that, maybe Tessa, you could, if you got any advice for people sort of looking for a trustee role, sort of how to find something that's right, or to find the right fit, sort of what's important. And then after that, maybe to ask Harry, sort of from an executive perspective, if you're thinking about developing your board, advice for people on sort of how to identify what the needs might be of the organisation in terms of trustee sort of specialisms. So if we come to you first, Tessa.
So I think being the right match, I think this is work on top of work, and it doesn't feel like it if you really care about it, though, and I think, so make sure it's something that really you care about, and I think you give better input, in that respect. I think also one of the things that I've done is look at organisations that I care about, and then I'll look at their board and say, well, do they have a digital trustee? Do you know? And you can actually just kind of approach them and say, would you be interested, or could I shadow your board, or is there any way I could get involved? So, you know, I don't think you have to wait for you know, a matchmaking. You can also kind of be proactive there. I would say, and I was about to write this in the chat, I was utterly terrified when I started thinking about being a trustee. Do you know? And I was like early 40s, so you know, maybe not the under 30s, but I was reasonably young. Everyone else looked old, and all the other kind of lack of diversity traits that we've talked about. And that my imposter syndrome was completely through the roof, do you know? And I think, but I still did it, do you know? And I still went for it. And then, you know, after a year, I kind of realized I was giving benefit back. So I would say that if you feel like that, or, you know, people feel like that, just keep going, because these organizations really, really need your help. Do you know, and in lots of ways that you might not expect. So, do you know, be honest, say what you can do, say what interests you. You know, this isn't about getting a job. This is about finding the right organization to match, you know. So it's as much about, you know, can I help them as can they help me, do you know? So yeah, be really honest in that conversation.
Thanks, Tessa. And Harry, just from your perspective, but to add in a question that was in the chat, which I think is connected, it's like this person saying it's fascinating how broad digital actually is. It could be anything from websites, social influencers, podcasts, cybersecurity, and more. We've listed a lot of them on this call. So, like, how do people know sort of how specific it should be, or what the actual needs are? And sort of how specialised should a trustee be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, you can't actually, before I answer that, I would like to just underline, I think, the importance of what Tessa was saying in terms of becoming a trustee. You know, the first thing is find a charity that you love what they do, because that has to be there, doesn't it? And I would love to see more people approaching charities proactively and saying, I'd be interested in being a trustee at one point. You know, here's what I do. That would be great, wouldn't it? It doesn't happen, but wish it did happen more, or at least it doesn't happen to charities I'm involved in. Anyway, I think, you know, I don't think we do this brilliantly here at the moment, the kind of the skills assessment at the board level. I'm pretty sure if you looked at our kind of pro forma for the skills assessment, digital is one box that you tick, which is clearly ridiculous. Having said that, you can't seek to build a board that ticks every single skill. You know, you need people who are perhaps bringing a speciality, but are also able to operate more. Tessa has been working on this. That's very true. Very true. You know, you need, by all means, bring to the board your particular speciality, but you also need to kind of bring at least a kind of appetite to work across that area. And I think one thing that, you know, again, Tessa does well is might be skills that Tessa or others on the board don't have, but, you know, you can use your network for the charity as well, can't you? You can at least bring someone else into the discussion who might be able to offer a bit of advice, and that can be really helpful, again, particularly for the smaller charities who just don't have that network and budget to bring in the skills.
Thanks. And John, do you have anything sort of from OSCR perspective to add around sort of skills and understanding needs on the board?
I suppose to reinforce what I said earlier is that actually I think a diverse board is a stronger board, because it has a range of experiences, a range of expertise, and we can hold each other to account, and you can have a better overview of what's going on as a collective group, because the collective group are the ones that have the overall responsibility. I mean, I think I hear what Ross and others are saying, and Harry are saying about recruitment of trustees and volunteers. We hear about this on a regular basis. With the event yesterday, it came up there. There's a challenge that charities face. I think you have the charities that are innovative and proactive about this will do better I think. So, so in the chat, how do we find out if an organisation has a volunteering support policy? I'm not sure there's a directory, but I know that most public sector organisations in Scotland will have one. I did volunteering days last year because I heard through the civil service that there was an opportunity. And so there's organisations that are proactively getting involved with projects like this and that try and seek out those people who do very well. What I will do is I'll put in the chat just now as well, just briefly, we will give support to organisations and new trustees around the induction process. So I heard that Tessa was saying about being scared and imposter syndrome, which which is real. And how you feel, but despite the fact that it's clearly not it's clear you should not feel like that way, but I know that you do. But so I'll put a link in the chat there to things that organisations can do to help support new trustees in general to make sure that you're on top of the responsibilities you have and the things you must and mustn't do.
Brilliant, thanks. Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it, about diverse and digitally aware, not one or the other, sort of both of those things are making you ready to sort of face the future and these challenges that are arising. So just before we sort of wrap up, I'm aware of time, I think it might be useful if we can just go through all the speakers and just ask you if there's sort of one thing or sort of that you want people to take away, because obviously we've just been discussing like the breadth of digital and everything that encapsulates, and it can, if you're on the board of a small charity that's run by volunteers, these things can feel like quite overwhelming. So I wonder if there's sort of one thing that you would want people to take away as sort of encouragement to sort of pursue this within their own organisations or to become a trustee, perhaps. So maybe if we come to you first, Tessa.
I'd say don't wait. I think there's so much stuff happening now, and with AI, it's just getting more complicated and scarier. So get the strategic help you need. And we don't bite. We're awfully nice. We want to help. So yeah, I'd say don't wait. And same to anyone who's thinking about trustee, don't leave it till later. I know you're busy. You've got kids and dog walking and whatever else, but you can fit it in.
Thank you. And what about you, Harry?
Yeah, I guess as well as don't wait. Don't worry about you don't need to bring all of the skills across all of the, to the charity. You just bring your one thing, as it were, but be prepared to engage more broadly with the charity and to signpost things and to bring other expertise in as you go.
Brilliant, thank you. And John, what about yours?
It's a real privilege to work with charities and with third sector organisations in Scotland. It's the scale and the scope, the benefit that these organisations bring to the communities that we all live in is absolutely tremendous. And so if you had the opportunity to do that, I would encourage it. But there's a responsibility to that privilege too for charities to be responsible to the people that they're benefiting by being a good charity, by trying to do good work well, and being digitally aware and planning to do that work well in this environment is essential to being a good charity in every sense.
Thanks. And you, Ross, last but not least, what would you want people to take away?
Tessa slightly stole mine because mine was going to be just start. So echoing, I guess, quickly what Tessa said there is like, don't think we need to have 3 board meetings before we decide this. If you've already identified that you need digital data design support to move forward in 2026, just take the plunge. I really liked Harry's point about like one person can't do all this stuff. So like when we talk about digital data design, that's a very broad church. It's okay that there's one thing you'll focus on at the start of 2026, whether it's cyber or data or service design, that's fine. So don't try and find one person that's going to uncover it all. One of the big things that I would say that I've found with digital trustees is getting one person in, so it was a data analyst or a developer or a service designer, that person will tend to know the people who can unlock those other parts. So if you get a service designer in, probably they will know a cybersecurity expert in their sphere. So you might be able to get other people in who come in for short-term board advisory positions, for example. So having one digital trustee can be that kind of hub and spoke model where you're bringing in other digital experts through their network. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And just to highlight, our colleague Kaylin has been dropping some links in the chat, but I'll just sort of go over the key ways that you can get involved through Digital Trustees to help you with some of this work. So on the website, if you're looking to become a trustee, you can post a profile. Organisations who are looking to recruit a digital trustee can post roles on there, and also you can browse the profiles both ways and look for opportunities and connect with each other. We do have an online matchmaking event on the 20th of January, so the sign up for that is live now. If you want to go to the website, you can sign up for that. That's just a fun, informal way to sort of meet a few different charities, meet some potential trustees, and sort of have a conversation and find out more about being a trustee. And then finally, we've got a mailing list as well if you want to sign up to that on the website and just get updates about the Digital Trustees programme. But anyone's welcome to reach out to myself or to Ross with any questions or queries, or sort of if you want any help around this, just to have a chat, please do feel free to reach out to us. So finally, just to say thank you so much to Harry, to Tessa, to John and to Ross, and for all of you for coming along today. We'll be in touch with you by email to follow up. And as I said, please do feel free to reach out to us directly if you've got any questions about the programme. Or Ross?
Yeah, I was just going to say
Something
one very, very short final thing, that if anyone in the room works for an organisation where you're keen to explore digital trustees from a CSR perspective or kind of volunteering programmes, then reach out to Zoe or I. If anyone in the room works for a membership body or a funder and you want to explore how we can support your members or grant holders, then again, reach out to us as well. Because as well as that one-to-one, we can do more kind of tailored support for groups.
Great, thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and the rest of Trustees Week if you have other events to go to. I know I've got a few more today. So thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Brilliant. And thanks to
Thank
Zoe for
you.
hosting as well. That was excellent.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you.